HR, RG for production, right? Let's say I give it a name RG1, resource group 1. Then we need to define the region, or we need to define the location, in which location we would like to deploy this.
Okay.
Few minutes back in the physical architecture we discussed, we have got 60 plus regions. Now, when we are deploying a resource group, we need to define in which region we would like to deploy it. So let's say I'm saying we are deploying it in the East US region. So this physical architecture or this logical architecture, it basically goes hand in hand.
Okay.
Right. Let me give you a very layman terms example. Let's say when we were in school, let's say when we were in class 10 standard. So in class 10 standard, the school administration divides the students of class 10 standard into multiple sections. 10th A, 10th B, 10th C, and so on, right? So what does those sections represent? It represents the logical divisioning of students of class 10th. 10th A contains the information about the students of class 10th A. How many students are there? What are their first names? What are their last names? What are their middle names? What are their roll numbers? What is the mode of their school transport? They come by school transport, they come on their own. What are their parents' name, guardian's name, emergency telephone number, and so on. So basically, it contains the metadata about the students of class 10th A. Similarly, this resource group will contain the metadata about the resources which is present inside RG1. How many
Okay.
resources are there? How many of them are virtual machines? How many of them are networks? What are the names of the virtual machines? In which region they are deployed? And so on. Right? So it
Okay.
contains the metadata. After resource group, we have something called as resources. So once we have the subscription, once we have the resource group, then finally we can go ahead and we can create a resource. Let's say I would like to create a virtual machine. So in order to create a resource, subscription is mandatory. By the time we don't have a subscription, we cannot create a resource group, we cannot create a resource. In order to create the resource group is also mandatory. So we have got RG1, which is in East US region. Then finally we would be able to create the resource. Let's say I'm trying to create a virtual machine. So it will ask us for the name of the virtual machine. Let's say I give it a name VM number 1. And then it will ask us in which region you would like to deploy this. Now, the question that may come across the mind is we are deploying this VM number 1 in RG number 1. RG number 1 is in East US. Then why is it not deploying this VM number 1 in East US? It clearly means the region of the resource and the region of the
Availability.
resource group. The region of the resource and the region of the resource group may or may not be same. It is quite possible we can deploy this in the East US region. It is also possible we may deploy this in the South India region. That is also possible.
So resource group means it doesn't mean it has nothing to with regarding the physical hardware.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the physical hardware. It's just
Resource
a
group is
container.
just like okay.
It's just a
But
container which contains some information about the resources. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So when region means where it is actually deployed physically.
Yeah, region means where it is actually deployed physically.
Okay.
So region of the resource and region of the resource group may or may not be same. In most of the conditions, right? In most of the conditions you will find out it would be same.
Okay.
In most of the conditions you will find out region of the resource and region of the resource would be the same. But if
Okay.
in case we have any business requirement and we would like to keep them in separate regions, it is absolutely possible.
Okay. And can one subscription have multiple RGs?
Yeah, it can have multiple RGs, absolutely. And
Okay.
in one RG, we can have multiple resources.
Okay.
So basically, what is a resource group? Resource group is nothing but a logical container which contains the metadata of the resources.
Yeah.
In one resource group, we can have multiple resources. Resources can be of same type, resources can be of different type, Resources might be in the same region, resources might be in a different region.
Mm-hmm.
So what we can see in this resource group, let's say we have got four resources: VM1, VM2, VNet1,
Mm-hmm.
and DB1, right?
Okay.
So we have got four resources. So some of them are of same type, VM1 and VM2, they are of same type. Both of them
Mm-hmm.
are virtual machines. Some resources are of different type. Third one is a network.
Mm-hmm.
Fourth one is a database.
Okay.
Some of them are in the same region as a region of a resource group.
Mm-hmm.
VM number one is in the same region as a region of RG1.
Mm-hmm.
VM2 is in a different region. VNet1 different region. DB1 in a different region.
Mm-hmm.
So resource group is nothing but a logical container which contains a metadata of the resources. In one
Mm-hmm.
resource group, we can have multiple resources. They can be of same type, they can be of different types, they might be in the same region, they might be in a different region. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Any
it's okay.
question, any query so far regarding the logical architecture?
No, we are good.
All right. Now we have one more hierarchy which is above the subscription as well. So above
Mm-hmm.
the subscription as well, we have one more hierarchy and we call it as management group. Right? We call this as
Okay.
management group. What can we achieve with the help of this management group? So we can achieve two things with the help of this management group.
Mm-hmm.
One is we can apply the policies at scale, and second is we can manage multiple subscription.
Subscriptions.
So policies can be applied at a scale. Basically, at a very high level, we would be able to apply the policies. And if in
Mm-hmm.
case we have multiple subscription and we would like to manage multiple subscription, that can
Mm-hmm.
also be done with the help of this management group. So these two things can be achieved, right?
Okay.
Right. See, before this cloud came into the picture, we have something called as on-premise or on-prem, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you please tell me how do we apply policies in on-prem?
On servers,
Yeah.
normally I think group policies
Yeah.
we push
So,
through like SCCM or something.
so basically, we do it via group policies. In short, we also call them as GPOs, group policy
Yep.
objects, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
What are the different levels where the group policy can be applied?
I have no idea of these things.
So basically, there is a shortcut to remember this. So shortcut is LSDOU.
Okay.
So here L stands for local,
Mm-hmm.
S stands for site, D stands for domain, and OU stands for,
Organization unit.
yeah, organizational.
Okay, so if one laptop is in local, so say there are five laptops or five machines,
Mhm.
how we can push like everything in say Facebook OU, push it, or and OU can have multiple domains. So we can say okay, anything in Facebook marketing, push it, right? And then Facebook marketing Chicago, push it like that.
Right, right. So basically, let's say I only want to apply a policy to my laptop. That is like a local to me. So you
Mm-hmm.
using local group policy editor, I can apply the policy to my machine. Then,
Okay.
if I would like to apply a policy at a site level, let's say there is an organization with the name Dell, and Dell
Mm-hmm.
has offices at multiple locations. They have office in New York, they have office
Mm-hmm.
in Ohio, they have office in Mumbai, they have office in Bangalore. Let's say right
Mm-hmm.
now, Dell only wants to apply the policy to the users and to the devices which belongs to New York site. So
Mm-hmm.
they can only apply the policy on the New York site. There are multiple sites. Multiple different locations means multiple sites Dell has got. And
Mm-hmm.
right now, we only want to apply the policy on the New York site. Right?
Okay.
Uh, then we can apply the policy at a domain level. Let's say Dell would like to apply the policy to the entire domain. So
Yeah.
we may apply the policy at a very high level, right? Then
Mm. So,
let's say we would like to apply the policy only on one OU. Let's say on New York, there can be some people who belong to HR team. In Mumbai, there can be some people who belong to HR team. In Ohio, in Bangalore, there can be some people who belong to the HR team. So I can create an OU for the HR. and whatever users and whatever devices which belongs to the HR team, maybe I can keep those users and I can keep those devices in that particular OU.
Okay.
Now if I only want to apply the policies to the HR team, to the devices and to the users of HR, I can simply apply the group policy on the OU level, right?
Okay.
So that is how we can do this. Can we apply the same group policy in Azure?
Mm, it has to be something. So it has to be maybe done by resource group or the region, like resource group mainly, or
Right.
I think resource.
Right. See, by default, the answer is no. So, how do we apply policies in Azure? There are ways of applying the group policy in Azure as well, but by default, the answer is no. So, how do we apply policies in Azure? We apply
Mm,
policies in Azure with the help of Azure policies.
okay.
Via Azure policies, we can apply the policies in Azure. I'll explain you Azure policy in detail in the upcoming sessions, but for now, we can apply the policies in Azure via Azure policies. What are the different levels where the Azure policy can be applied? These are the levels where the Azure policy can be applied. So we
Hmm.
can apply the policy at a management group level. We can
Hmm.
apply the policy at a resource subscription level. We
Hmm.
can also apply the policy at a resource group level. And policies are inherent in nature.
Hmm.
If we
Okay.
apply the policy at a management group level, it will be inherited down the line. If we
Okay.
don't want to apply this at a management group level, let's say we only want policy to be applied on one subscription, we can do it. Then it will
On
be,
the subscription.
yeah, then it will only be applicable to that subscription, resource groups which are falling under that subscription, and resources which are falling under that subscription.
Yep. They all will have it then. Okay.
Yeah. If I only want to apply to one resource group, I can do it. So basically, these are the three levels where the policies can be, or the Azure policies can be applied, right?
Hmm.
Okay. Now what we can see at the top, so we can see at the top that we have got something called as management group,
Hmm.
right? We can see at the top we have got something called as management group. So can you please tell me what would be the name of the first management group? What would be the
Name.
name? Yeah,
It could be anything.
right. So basically this first management group has a name and we call it as tenant root group.
Okay.
Right? We call it as tenant root group. So sometimes people call this as tenant root management group. Sometimes people call this as tenant root group. So tenant root group is a precise name. So precise name
Okay.
is tenant root group. Now let's say if I have an Azure account, I will have a tenant root group.
Hmm.
If you have an Azure account, you will have a tenant root group. So how do we differentiate
Hmm.
which tenant root group belongs to whom?
Hmm.
So let's say if my tenant root group has a name tenant root group, if your tenant root group also have a same name, how do we differentiate the request is coming from which tenant root group? Or how will even Microsoft differentiate the request is coming from which tenant root group? So every tenant root group has an ID. Every,
Okay. That big long ID.
yeah, we call it as
Okay.
tenant ID. So this tenant ID, it's always a unique number. No two tenant ID can never ever be same. So with the
Yep.
help of this tenant ID, we would be able to differentiate the request is coming from which tenant root, right?
Okay.
Now question comes, how do we get this tenant root group? So first management group is called as tenant root group, but how we are getting this first management group or how we are getting this tenant root group? So this point will clear later on in the upcoming sessions. For now, just remember the point. For now, just cram the point that whenever we create a tenant or whenever we create a directory or
Hmm.
whenever we get a tenant or
Hmm.
whenever we get a directory, then we get this
Hmm.
tenant root group,
Okay.
right? So whenever we are creating a tenant or whenever we are creating a directory, whenever we are getting a tenant or whenever we are getting a directory, we get this tenant root group, right?
Okay.
Any questions, any queries, anything so far?
No, no, we are good.
All right, let me show you a few things out here. See, so how can we go to the portal? So this is the URL. So we can simply go to portal.azure.com and we can simply try to log in with the credentials, right? So whatever is your Azure account and whatever is the password, you can log in with this. So let's say this is my account for
Mm-hmm.
now. So I'm logged in using these credentials, right? Now, if I want to see the tenant root group, so I can just type here management group. So when I go to management group, right? So here I can see the tenant root group. So this is the first root group we have got. That is tenant root group. Right? So in front of this tenant root group, I can see this is
Yeah.
the
ID.
ID. This is nothing but the tenant ID, right?
Okay.
So what is tenant? What is directory? All these concepts we will talk in the upcoming sessions.
Okay.
Now in this tenant, how many subscriptions we have? As of now, we have got one subscription. And
Mm-hmm.
just like every tenant root group has an ID, every subscription has also an ID.